We hope to get started in the next minute or so. So please stand by as we try to get the equipment to work. But we're not turning this mic on.
No, I know, but the speaker's gonna be close to your mic.
Let me just grab it. That's a standby just in case. So we can wear it charged? Yeah. Should be. It's on, Anthony? There it is. Testing, testing. Is that okay? Can you hear? Testing, testing. Are we okay? Okay. Thanks everybody for your patience. Anthony, are we okay to go? Yeah. Okay. Good evening, everybody. My name is Linda Lossick. I'm the coordinator of special programs for secondary. Welcome to the Transition to High School Parent Information Evening. We are so pleased that you have taken the time out of your very busy schedules, especially because the weather is as terrible as it is. So thank you so much for driving to be here this evening. We have probably about 400 people registered to either view, or many were planning to be here this evening. We assumed many would readjust their plans, and that's just fine. So the presentation this evening is being live streamed, and we will also be recording it, and we will be sharing that recording with all of you after the fact, and we'll also share the slide deck with everybody as well. So don't worry about frantically trying to get any notes down. We will share everything with all the registrants after the fact. Admittedly, the transition to high school can feel like a bit of a scary time for both you and your children. It is our sincere hope that the information we share with you this evening will help to put you at ease as your child prepares to leave their elementary school behind and start their very exciting journey ahead. But before we begin this presentation, I would ask that you join me in prayer. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, amen. Heavenly Father, we pray that you offer our children direction, purpose, and perseverance as they begin to plan the next phase of their lives. We ask that you give them clearness of mind to move forward into the plans and purposes that you have for them. Grant them success for their efforts at every turn, and guide their feet to follow your ways. May you always inspire in them the eagerness to do good all the days of their lives. Amen. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, amen. At this time, it's my pleasure to introduce my partner, Elsa Strano, coordinator of special programs for elementary, to lead us in the land acknowledgements and to say a few words.
Thank you. We are gathered on the ancestral lands and waters of all Indigenous people who have left their footprints on Mother Earth before us. We respectfully acknowledge those who have walked on it, those who walk on it now, and future generations who have yet to walk upon it. We pray to the Creator for strength and wisdom that all may continue to serve as stewards of the earth. So are you going to keep that?
At this time, it is my pleasure to introduce the chair of our SEAC committee, our Special Education Advisory Committee, and YCDSB trustee for Vaughan Area 3, Ward 3, 4, and 5, Angela Grella. Trustee Grella will share Trustee Grella will be sharing some words of welcome, and she'll be providing some information about SEAC for you. Trustee Grella?
Yeah, right on. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Perfect. Okay. Good evening, parents, guardians, and students. Welcome and thank you for joining us this evening. I'm sure you can appreciate that it takes a team of dedicated people to rally around our students to ensure that they reach their God-given potential. And I am confident that you will come away from this evening feeling reassured that your child will be in good hands when they start this new phase of their lives in one of our exceptional York Catholic District School Board high schools. As the chair of the YCDSB Special Education Advisory Committee, I have had the privilege of working with the special education staff joining us this evening, as well as with other trustees and representatives of local associations who sit on SEAC. The role of SEAC is to provide important advice to the board on special education and to also make recommendations to the board on any matters affecting the establishment, development, and delivery of special education programs and services for our exceptional students. Please know that my fellow SEAC members and I are always available as a resource for exceptional students, parent, guardians of these students, schools, educators, trustees, and the community. Many members of SEAC are parents themselves of students with exceptional needs and are therefore acutely aware of the educational needs these students may have. The York Catholic District School Board SEAC Committee holds monthly meetings, which are open to the public, and we invite all parents, guardians, and other interested members to join us whenever possible. The meeting is also streamed. If you go to the board website, the dates for each virtual SEAC meeting are provided. Our next virtual meeting is on December the 9th at 7 p.m. right here in the board office. All are welcome to attend or view us online. For more information about SEAC, please use the link or the QR code on the screen, or just simply go to the York Catholic District School Board website. You'll find all the information there. Dear parents and guardians, I wish you and your children God's grace as you approach this exciting new chapter. Thank you and Merry Christmas to all and a happy 2025. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Trustee Grella, for taking the time to be here this evening in spirit, if not in person. And so now I'm pleased to invite our Superintendent of Exceptional Learners, Jennifer Powers, to come and to share a few words with you.
Sorry. Thank you for joining it. Is this on? Is it? Okay. Thank you for joining us this evening for our transition to high school information session. The transition from elementary school to secondary school is an exciting time for our students. While it is a time of personal growth, new discoveries, and opportunity, it is also amongst the most challenging period of adolescence. Evidence gained from research and practice has confirmed the value and benefit of transition planning for all students, especially students with exceptional educational needs. Successful transition experiences help build resiliency, support improved student achievement and well-being, and for students with exceptional educational needs, results in improved continuity of programs and services. The development of a coordinated and detailed plan for the transition to high school will help ensure that schools and school board staff are prepared to meet the needs of your child. contributing to a smooth transition and paving the way for your child's future success. As superintendent of exceptional learners, I want to assure you that here at the York Catholic District School Board, we will do all we can to support you and your child as they enter this exciting new phase of their educational journey. In our special education plan, we share our vision for your children, that all students with special education needs as meaningful members of an inclusive Catholic community will reach optimal independence and achievement through strategic, focused, accessible, and timely educational interventions. This is our promise to you. This evening, you will have the opportunity to learn more about how our York Catholic District School Board educators work hard each and every day to ensure that this vision is realized for all of our students. Once again, thank you for joining us this evening, and I will now turn it over to our Student Services team.
Thank you. So just very quickly, some rules of engagement. We just want to let you know that we did post the Google form that you see in front of you there that you can actually scan with the QR code, or just add the bit.ly link into your cell phone if you have it with you. And for those parents who are watching at home, you can actually ask a live question. So you can use that Google form to ask a question. I'm managing the document that actually sees the anonymous questions pop up. So it's not that we're not welcoming questions from our audience here. We absolutely are. But we just ask that you hold your questions until the end. And we'll tell you why, because we typically answer your question 3 or 4 slides later when you ask that question. So it'll just give us the ability to get through the presentation. We'll hold the questions until the end, and we'll do the same for our parents online. So if you're putting in an anonymous question using that Google form, we will take some time to answer that at the end of the session. Many of the questions you ask, I promise you, will be answered throughout the presentation. We're going to be talking for probably a good 2 hours. And so I know it's a long time, and a lot of you might think maybe you need to get home earlier. Not a problem. Again, you will be receiving a recording of this session. You will also get a slide deck, and you will have access to all of the links in the document. So not to worry if you do have to go home, but there's much to share and many slides to go through and much information to review. So too often we answer all of the questions that you're asking along the way anyway. So at the end of the session, we'll take a look at the questions that have been asked. We'll also open up the floor to questions. But the one thing that we do ask is that you respect your child's privacy. And sometimes we get carried away and we start to ask some personal questions, and we share some personal information about our children. We want to make sure that we keep the questions as general as possible so that we're not giving away any personal information. Even though many of us are comfortable to share in a safe space, it's best to keep that private. We'll stay behind after. We'll answer some questions, although I know everybody's going to want to get home, especially because of the weather. But we will do our best to answer as many questions as possible. And then after the fact, the elementary schools have received the same presentation. We had all of the elementary teachers and principals come in. Not all of them could make it, but many were here a few weeks ago on November 20th. And they received a very similar presentation, so they're up to speed, and so they can certainly answer many of your questions, and the high schools can certainly answer questions too when it comes time for you to connect with them. So just a very quick overview of what to expect this evening. We're going to be talking about the transition planning process for your kids. Most of you are here, not all, most of you are here because your children are in grade 8 and the change is coming soon. Some of you have kids that are younger, and it's always great to start planning early, so it's nice to see you here. We'll talk a little bit about the course selection process, which can be confusing. We get that. We'll talk about secondary school logistics. What does special education look like for your children when they get to high school? We'll also talk about pathway planning. If they're with us from 4 to 7 years, because they do have an option potentially to stay until 21, what is that going to look like? What are those 4 to 7 years going to look like while they're with us as we prepare them for their pathway that they're going to choose when they leave us? So we'll talk about what those pathways could look like. We'll talk about programming by exceptionality. We have many kiddos with many different types of disabilities, and we support them all. And we are going to be talking about the types of supports, the individualized supports that students do receive based on the disability that they've been identified with. And then we'll talk about what special education supports in high school look like. There's lots of it. And parents are often very nervous because they had wonderful support in elementary school. Some of you have very small, cozy elementary schools. You know everybody by name and it's comfortable. And you've been there in some cases for 10 years and you know everybody and you know everything. And now you're starting off into a brand new, kind of scary situation. And we get it. But we want to reassure you tonight that within a couple of weeks of school starting, you will exhale. And you will start to think, this is not as scary as I thought it was going to be. And so what we always say is, the more we can make parents and guardians exhale and become comfortable, the more the kiddos start to exhale and become comfortable as well. They feed off of us. And so it's really important that they see that we're ready for this. Together, we got this. And so that will be really critical for all of us together to feel that we can take on this exciting, little scary, but exciting new challenge that's coming their way. And it's going to be a great challenge too. So I do want to share my partners with you. So Elsa is I already introduced Elsa. Elsa Strano is my elementary counterpart. So she's the coordinator for elementary for special programs. I'm the coordinator for secondary, so we work together very closely. But Michelle Kim and Lloyd Yanis are the two consultants for special education. They are what I say, boots on the ground. So they're in the schools every single day, day in and day out. They typically go to one school in the morning, one school in the afternoon. We've got 17 high schools. They're all over York Region going to those schools. And they report back to me and I report back to our superintendent powers. So that's kind of the chain of command. And so we all know what's going on in the schools. Very shortly, we will know all of your kids. We will know your names. We will know your kids' names. And it's quite lovely. We do feel like a family in a short amount of time. So Lloyd and Michelle are going to help this presentation happen this evening. So we're going to start off with Michelle, then Lloyd is going to chime in. Too many slides for one person. It's a lot of information. So I am very pleased to ask Elsa to start us off. So Elsa's going to start as the elementary coordinator. She'll start us off just talking about, from her perspective as an elementary coordinator, how the elementary schools are preparing for this transition, and then she'll turn it over to my team and I, and we will start to talk about what the high school reality is going to look like for you.
Can you put that on? Yeah, I'm going to wear it. Okay, yeah, I would too. Okay, is this staying here? Okay, can everybody hear me? Yeah, okay. Thank you, Linda. Okay. So to quote our Creating Pathways to Success document, the transition from elementary to secondary school is among the most challenging periods of adolescence. Effective transition planning to secondary school begins for all students in grade 7 and continues into some time beyond grade 9. A smooth transition contributes to a strong foundation for success in secondary school and beyond. So all of our students moving into high school from elementary must have a transition plan, and we begin that work while they are still in elementary school. So what are the keys to that successful transition? Well, long-term planning. We actually start at the post-secondary destination thinking, what happens after high school actually, and how can we work backwards to make sure that we are giving our students what they need in order to be successful. From there, we plan an individualized pathway for students, and that is based on their own profile, their strengths and needs. We provide opportunity for students to achieve to their fullest potential. Just like every adult here this evening, watching or here in the boardroom with us, has chosen a different path for their future. And that was based on our strengths, things that we enjoyed doing, and things we were good at. So those are the things we look at for our student. We want to make sure that whatever it is that they choose, they can reach their fullest potential. Transition planning is an ongoing process, and plans are reviewed and revised as the student moves from elementary on to secondary and throughout. So we review these plans every year, even in elementary school, from grade to grade, not just from elementary to high school. sorry. So this is a big one, however, right? So we call this a big T. This is a big transition. And those happen in a child's career when they transition between elementary and secondary, and then again when they transition from secondary to post-secondary. So we call these the big T. Transition plan must be included in a student's IEP in order to support these transitions. They are all different and unique, and that is why we start early. So as early as grade 7, as we said. So there are 4 steps to transition planning. As parents, we have a big decision to make as to where our students, first of all, attend high school, and it's a tough decision. So whether you choose Catholic versus public education, private versus public education, that is a tough decision. And you as parents have that decision to make. So here at York Catholic, we have an integrated model. Students coming in from elementary are coming from inclusive classrooms. And later on, my colleagues here will discuss how that looks in high school. Whether you go to a Catholic, a private, a public high school, students always have to get a total of 30 credits in order to graduate. So that doesn't change no matter which board you go to. So this is your decision to make, and it has to work for your child and your family. And we understand that. And if you're here because you've chosen Catholic education for your student, we'd like to thank you for that. And we're very happy to have you here with us. Step 2 is research and information gathering. So as I said, you have that decision to make as a parent, and please do the research. Go out there and see what is available for your child out there. Like tonight, attending the secondary school parent information night. Other school boards do that as well, as I'm sure you've heard private schools are doing it. So do go out to those schools and attend those information nights to see, so you can make an informed decision for your child. Now here at YCDSB, if your child is coming from one of our elementary school, we plan that. We plan the transition in the schools. We have this information evening for you as parents, and we let you know about that. If you would like to consider other options, you will have to go out there and plan those on your own. But please, again, do make sure that you do that and plan visits, bring your child with you and see what's available out there. And then reach out to teachers in private institutions as well. Step 3 is we must establish a transition timeline. So the first one is in the fall. That's when the first thing you have to do is determine the secondary school destination. So that's why we have this meeting usually in November and December while these open houses are going on. In the wintertime, transition meetings actually begin within the schools. So I'll get into that a little bit further along. We do actually start having our transition meetings in the winter, which is right around the corner. And then in the spring, we make plans for our students to actually visit the high schools, visit the teams, and see what the buildings are like, etc. Step 4, establishing a transition planning team. So once you've made your decision as to where your child is going to high school, this planning team that is created, this is very critical. So who is part of that planning team at the school level? It's the special education teacher who probably knows your child best, the school administrator at their elementary school, the multidisciplinary team, if there's been involvement. So our multidisciplinary teams include our OTs and our speech and language pathologists, in some cases our psychologists. So if they've had direct involvement or a lot of involvement with your child, they are usually at part of that team as well. A parent, you are part of the team. The student, again, if applicable, depending on their age and communication, and any relevant community agencies. So if perhaps you have been involved with any of those, they also make up part of this planning team. There are also 4 phases. So the first phase at the school level is assembling a transition portfolio. So just like when you go to a job and you create a portfolio, we develop transition portfolios for our students before they move on to high school. And I'll get into that in a few minutes. Then we have a transition meeting. As I mentioned, we get together with our high school counterparts, the elementary team and the secondary team, and we have a meeting to transition the students. Documenting and implementing a plan. So once we have that meeting and a plan is created, that is shared with parents. And then as mentioned earlier, there is ongoing review of that plan. No plan is static. Decisions that are made can be changed. So that's why we have a constant review of anything that we decide. So this is what the transition portfolio looks like. In phase one, when the schools prepare a portfolio, it includes the student's most recent individual education plan, the most recent report card. An academic assessment needs to be completed by the current special education teacher. Now, if your child is in grade 8 and they had one in grade 7, it probably won't be repeated completely, but updated. But it has to be done within their intermediate years. And you should get a copy of that, and they would give you feedback on that. And then if they have been to IPRC, to Identification Committee, or you've had your recent review, because any student who's been to IPRC has a review every year. So the most recent paperwork from that meeting is also part of the student portfolio. Then if there's any other documents that belong in that student's profile, like if they have a medical management plan, if there is a behavior support plan, a safety plan of any kind, if your child has individualized equipment, whether it's equipment for physical needs or if they have a Chromebook, laptop that goes with them, that would also be included, and that would transfer with them to high school, as well as a list of co-curricular activities and interests. Because like I mentioned earlier, pathways, part of our pathways is the things that we're good at and that we love to do. So that is compiled by the elementary team. And like Linda mentioned, we had a meeting with all our elementary teachers just a few weeks ago. So they do know about this. We have the meeting every year because we get new teachers that come into the system. So to make sure everybody knows the responsibilities. And that is then shared with our secondary team. So those meetings start to happen usually around January. So teachers are busy preparing that right now. So what does that meeting look like? So it is the secondary school, either the special education department head from the school that they will be going to, or sometimes a secondary school administrator attends, the vice principal usually. The elementary school administrator is always at that meeting, the elementary special education teacher. The grade 8 teacher, if possible. Sometimes the teachers can't be released from their classroom, but as much as possible, we try to make it so that the teachers can attend that meeting as well. Again, any multidisciplinary team members, if needed, it depends on the amount of work that they've actually done with your child, but reports and notes are always shared. So for students with real complex needs, that's when we ask the parents to come to that initial meeting as well, just to make sure that we've covered everything. Other than that, the very first meeting is just between the two schools. So we're letting you know here everything that's part of that portfolio and who's present at the meeting, but the parents don't usually come to that meeting. That is just so that the secondary school can prepare and make sure that we have places and all everything that we need to have in place for when the students arrive. Now, for those students that do have more complex needs, we will require extensive and detailed transition plan. So again, usually there's equipment that follows the child. We want to make sure everything gets there. So we plan a few more meetings along the way, and parents are invited to that. That happens after the initial meeting between the elementary and the secondary schools. Sometimes we do have more than one visit to that secondary school for these students, just to make sure that they are comfortable and familiar with what they will be seeing when they get to the secondary school. We know sometimes that transition takes a little bit longer, so we gladly give them those opportunities, and we support those visits as well. But always remember and keeping in mind that no matter how well developed a plan seems on paper, success for a student will only occur when that plan becomes action. And sometimes when we put it into action, it doesn't work quite the way we thought it would on paper. So again, that's when review is really important, and we are doing that constantly. So please don't be anxious if it seems like things aren't going the way they promised us that it would in high school. We may need to review, regroup, and make some changes, and that's okay. We're prepared to do that, and that's where the secondary team comes in. So I'm going to pass it now to Michelle. Kim? Okay. Okay. Sorry.
Thanks, Elsa. All right. So I do want to introduce Michelle Kim. So she's one of our special education program consultants. She supports all of the schools that are east of Yonge. Lloyd Yanis supports all the schools west of Yonge. So depending on where your child will be attending, you'll be seeing those different faces at those schools. So I'm pleased to introduce Michelle. You can get to know her now. Michelle, like me, came up from elementary first. So we were both elementary teachers, and then high school teachers, special education teachers, department heads of special education. So we've been around a long time, and we've seen all of the different kinds of kids come through our schools. We've enjoyed supporting them, and nothing phases us. So we often hear parents call us and talk to schools and say, no, but you don't understand. My child is so complex, and he's nonverbal, and he needs toileting, and he needs feeding. We got this. It's nothing we haven't seen before. And this is what we really want to impress upon you, especially for those parents who have kids with complex needs. We've got this. And we'll work together to make sure that the transition works well. Do you want to?
So thank you for coming tonight. So my name is Michelle Kim, and I'm one of the special education consultants for secondary. And I'm pleased to be here tonight with everyone. It's very exciting going from grade 8 to grade 9, and I'm glad to see some students here as well. So I know that some of you have already gone to the grade 8 nights at the high schools. So that happened in November. So another very big important date for everybody to remember is February. So February, if you're coming from a feeder school into your local high schools for your Catholic, February is the time that you are doing course selections. So it is extremely important in February that you have your child complete their course selection with you. And so that is to be counted into the courses that are going to be held at the school for the year afterwards, okay? So it's very, very important. This February deadline is extremely important for you to follow. So for students who are in the regular program, who are working toward the Ontario Secondary School Diploma, and who are earning credits, they will complete it on My Blueprint. And the school will go through that with you. And so you have to make sure that all of your courses are inputted through My Blueprint, and it's submitted into the schools. The other, so for students who are who want to take learning strategies, they will be also, for students who are in alternative programs who are working for non-credit, they will not be selecting their courses through My Blueprint. They will be selecting it through their department, through and ADHD to choose learning strategies to take during the school year. So that course is GLE 1.0, and that can be also selected through My Blueprint as well. If GLE 1.0, the learning strategies is selected and a student requires a French substitution, they will still need to add French, but then there will be a little area in a comment where you can put some more information, and we're going to talk about that a little bit later and how that will replace the French course. Okay. We're going to blame it on the snowstorm. Okay, so decisions about course types in grade 9. So this is to take into consideration the courses that you're going to choose. And this is not just for grade 9, it's for grade 9, grade 10, grade 11, and grade 12. And there are hard decisions to make sometimes. What do you have to look at? Take a look at the current level of achievement. What are their strengths? What are their interests? What's their skills, their learning styles? Are they hands-on? Are they visual, kinesthetic? Do they love the arts? Do they love reading? What are their strengths? Take a look at that. Take a look at the degree of modification in grade 8. Does the IEP have modifications in it? If there are modifications, then that is something to really take into consideration. Are there any assessment information? So we talked about doing academic testing in grade 7 and 8. There's also other academic testing, academic assessment information that we can take a look at as well. And take a look at long-term pathways and goals. What is your child's long-term post-secondary goal? What is your what is your expectations for your child post-secondary as well? Okay, so you can take all of this into consideration, and it is really ultimately the parent's choice to choose the course type. So what are the different course types? There's K courses, which are non-credit. These are students who are working on alternative programming. We have the locally developed, and so those are the L courses, and they have the locally developed, each high school has it in English, math, and science, and those are credit-bearing courses. We have the D-streamed, which is the Ws, and which is math, science, English, geography, and French. And then the open courses, those are all the electives, which includes all the religion, the arts, phys ed, exploring technology, introduction to business, and learning strategies. So we're going to go through a little bit about the course types so that you understand them a little bit more. So the first course type are the K courses. So this is for our very select group of students who are usually in the functional life skills programs. And so these are students who are working on alternative expectations. They're non-credit. And so the expectations that those students are working on are very highly individualized. And they are for students who are going to stay with us for about 7 years until they're 21 years old. And they are right now in grade 8 working towards significantly modified expectations or alternative program expectations. So these are our very special students that we try and keep with us for until they're 21 years old. So we have the locally developed L courses, and these are for the students who really flourish in those small classes with direct teacher support. And these are students who focus on literacy, numeracy, problem solving, decision making, and communication skills. But these are courses that are actually credit bearing and can go towards the Ontario Secondary School Diploma or the Ontario Secondary School Certificate. So pathway, these are students who are considering entering the workplace upon graduation. The D-streamed W courses, so these are the courses, they replace all the academic and applied courses. So in grade 8 going to grade 9, you're not making those decisions. Those decisions are not made until grade 9 going into grade 10. So these are the W courses. Open courses are for all the elective courses, including religion, and so they're open for all students. So the arts, phys ed, also tech courses, and so these are not linked to a specific post-secondary destination. So what are the grade 9 possible pathways to success? So one thing that we do look at with high school is we always look at the post-secondary destination starting right from when you enter in grade 9. For most of you, we only have you for 4 very short years. So we want to make sure that we're doing backwards planning to make sure that you end up in the post-secondary pathway that you want to achieve. So if you take a look at grade 9, everyone takes pretty much
either the locally developed or the D-stream classes. In grade 10, there's more choices. The academic applied, locally developed, and open is always available. Grade 11 becomes university. Grade 11 and 12 becomes university or university college, college, workplace, or open classes. And then you see the different post-secondary destinations, and we're going to go through each of those. So let's take a look at a possible pathway to success for grade 9. So if the student is taking the D-stream courses in grade 9, what are the options for grade 10, 11, and 12? So if you take a look at the first course type, the D stands for academic. In grade 10, they can go into D, academic, which becomes in grade 11, U, university, and then grade 12, university. Okay, so the second pathway they can take from the D streamed in grade 9, if they've earned that credit in grade 10, they can go to P, which is applied. Grade 11, that becomes college, and then grade 12, that's college as well. In D streamed in grade 9, again, if they've earned that credit, they can also, in grade 10, take the locally developed. In grade 11 and 12, that becomes workplace courses. Okay, and the schools will go through this with you every year when you are choosing courses. So what's a possible pathway for students who take locally developed in grade 9? So these are also students who are earning credits. In grade 9, if you take locally developed, then in grade 10, you're eligible for locally developed. Grade 11 and 12, you're eligible for workplace. And then the post-secondary pathway is usually straight to workplace or some select college programs. So let's take a look at this pathway. If a student took locally developed in grade 9 and then wanted to change to D-streamed, they cannot go from grade 9 locally developed to grade 10 applied in grade 10 because they don't have that prerequisite. Okay, so that student who is taking locally developed grade 9 would have to go back and complete the D streamed in grade 9 in order to be eligible to take the grade 10 applied to go to the grade 11 and 12 college. Okay, a little bit confusing, but it does happen where students do change pathways, and that's with a lot of work and guidance from the teachers and the guidance counselors and the administration. So the school will work together with you if this is a pathway change and if it does happen. So backwards planning, we have most of our students for 4 short years. And so we want to do backwards planning. Where is their post-secondary destination or their hope to be post-secondary? And then we work backwards, okay? So always begin with the end in mind because we have to plan from grade 9 forward. So what are the different post-secondary destinations after 4 years, 5 years, 6 or 7, so students can stay until 7 for 7 years. There's a university pathway, the college pathway. You can also go from college to university. There's the college vocational. Some students go straight to employment, and some students go to a community placement. Okay, so pathways to post-secondary can be changed at any time, and I know students always change their mind. And so taking a look at where they are, what their interests are, so we always take those into consideration every year. It's hard when you're 14 to determine what you want to do after you graduate. So what are the post-secondary pathways? So there's 3 in the Ministry of, in Ontario, through the Ministry of Education. We have the Ontario Secondary School Diploma, which is 30 credits. There's the Ontario Secondary School Certificate, which is 14 credits. And then we have the Certificate of Accomplishment, which is Alternative Expectations. And that is for our students who are not working on credits. So we're going to start with the most, the one that the students most achieve, and it's the Ontario Secondary School Diploma. So it's a little bit hard to see here, but you'll see that it is 30 credits, and there are a few requirements that the student has to achieve and earn in order to earn that diploma. So the first is the Ontario Secondary School Literacy Requirement, and that is usually taken in grade 10. And so the student must attempt the OSSLT, the Ontario Secondary School Literacy Test, at least once. If they're successful, they have earned that requirement. If they are not successful, they can either try the test again, or they can take the Ontario Literacy course, which is a full semester course in grade 11 or 12. So you can, this is a requirement that must be completed. Without this requirement and the 30 credits and the community service, you will not graduate with the OSSD. And if you have an IEP, you will get accommodations and support as well. So some of our students may qualify for a French substitution in grade 9. And so if there's a few stipulations that they have to meet with the criteria. So if the student hasn't received the amount of instructions needed for the grade 9 course, then they can receive a substitution. If a student has been identified with a learning exceptionality in language, they can receive a substitution. If a student is ESL or a recent immigrant, they can receive a substitution. Or a student has a mild intellectual disability, which prevents them from being successful in the French program. So we really do try to have our students earn that French credit, but there are a select few that are eligible for the substitution, and that is really up to the principal to grant that substitution. So this is the little note here where we had put for in my blueprint. If you know that your child has been accepted for French substitution, you still have to keep French in the My Blueprint selection. And then in the note, it will see that you would write in the comments, students' first alternate course will be used, okay? And that will go to the guidance counselor, and the guidance counselor will take that and remove the French from the grade 9 year. Also, there is a Kickstart program that a lot of our students take in grade 8. And so it's a really great program where the students can go into their high schools. So that course will be coded GLS when they enter, which is a learning strategies course, which is another course code that we use. But once the student has entered into the school, that course will be changed to HIF 1.0, so it doesn't conflict if they're taking learning strategies at the regular high school during the school year. Okay, so the learning strategies course. I recommend everyone to take this course. If you have a learning disability or ADHD, it's a wonderful course, one of my favorite courses that I love to teach. It's a small class and it's run by, it's taught by a teacher in the student services department. And it's just a great class to help students transition. And it's wonderful for the students to get to know their teacher who is in the student services department. And it's also great for us teachers to get to know the students as well. Okay, so one of my favorite courses to teach, they teach students to become much more independent learners. We work on self-advocacy, literacy, numeracy, lots of assistive technology, lots of confidence building and motivation. And it's just a great way for students to transition into high school is to take that learning strategies course in grade 9. And as I had mentioned, the summer school course, which is coded as GLS, is not the same as GLE, but we do recommend if you have a learning disability or ADHD, we really highly recommend the learning strategies course. So there is a new part of the OSSD that is coming out by the Ministry of Education, and it's the math financial literacy requirement. We do have a little bit of information right now, but not everything. So starting in 2025, the students must complete a new financial literacy graduation requirement as part of their math course. Okay, so they must be able to create and manage a household budget, save for a home or asset, and protect themselves from financial fraud. So this is part of the new the math literacy requirement. So we're not sure what it's going to look like yet. So let's wait until we get more information, but it will be part of the new OSSD requirements. Okay, so the Ontario Secondary School Certificate, some of our students will work toward a certificate. The certificate is 14 credits, 7 compulsory and 7 optional. And so usually they're working between credit courses and non-credit courses in grade 11 and 12. And so those students will can stay from 4 to 7 years and then work towards their post-secondary pathway. So locally developed courses, as I said before, are part of this credits earning. So these are the students who are working through the Ontario Secondary School Certificate are usually in the locally developed pathway, which becomes workplace. And up to 3 substitutions can be used, which can be the French. I've never seen all 3 substitutions used ever by anybody, but usually French and sometimes phys ed if it's someone with a physical disability. But I have also seen students with physical disabilities who have said, no, I am taking that gym class and I want to be a part of it. Okay, so really we listen to the students and we take everything they say into consideration. So modifying curriculum at the secondary level. So what happens with modifications in elementary and secondary are very different. Why is it different? It's because when we're in high school, now we are working towards earning credits. Okay, so modifications are kept to a minimum in high school. Do we use them? Yes, we do. We take a look at the profile of the learner and we do modify. However, we do have to be careful when we're modifying not to take out too many expectations. We cannot take out strands because then we are changing the course. And so a lot of those course expectations are building blocks for courses in grade 10, 11, and 12. So we take modifications very seriously. Okay, so it will, if your child is, it will be receiving modifications or considering modifications. That is a whole discussion that you will have with the principal, the special education staff, and with guidance, just to make sure that we're doing the right, we're following the right processes. So modified curriculum expectations for a credit course should not include omitting an entire strand. We cannot alter the expectations for a different course type. And we cannot take out building block expectations. So if you take a look at something like math, if you modify a math course, if you take out building block expectations, then you're taking out a strand that is for grade 10, 11, and 12. So we take it very seriously with modifications. And so that is a discussion that we will have with parents before we would consider that.
I think the mic is working. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for being here, taking time out of your busy schedule to learn more about high school. So very happy to have you here. So Michelle mentioned the certificate of accomplishment. And for students that are not working towards a high school diploma or a certificate, they need to be recognized. They need to be recognized for the work that they've done over 4+ years. So they receive a certificate of accomplishment. And that certificate of accomplishment is signed by our Director of Education. And we'll talk about the pathways, and Michelle also mentioned about the K courses, which I will elaborate. So what did the ministry do years ago? The ministry recognized that not all students could access curriculum. So they provided us with alternative courses. And what you see here are K courses. And each K course is a cluster of expectations based on a theme. That theme could be literacy. Theme could be numeracy, skills of daily living, culinary, vocational skills, whatever that may be. So if you have a son or daughter that will be working on alternative expectations, next year on their timetable, you'll see these K courses. And ultimately, you'll see them on the transcript. So again, it's recognizing what they're doing and the theme of each particular course. We know that one size does not fit all. Not everyone fits in a cookie cutter approach. So we have to be mindful of the fact that each child learns differently, and we have to appreciate the fact that we have to be flexible in high school. So we try to be. So it's all about the end in mind, as Michelle mentioned, and working backwards. So it's always about that long-range planning in consultation with you and in consultation with your child. So we may have to make some alterations. We made a pivot with regards to when your child will be taking a particular course. Is your child going to be graduating in 4 years, or will your child be graduating in 4.5, 5, 6 years? That's a discussion that needs to be taking place. Michelle mentioned substitutions. Is there an advantage to have a substitution in a particular grade? Maybe. If it's in the best interest of your child, let's do it. And we know that every child has a different post-secondary destination. And we know that there's different ways to get to the same endpoint. So let's be creative with your son or daughter to get to that endpoint that they want to reach. So I'm really hoping that you had an opportunity to go to the open house last month at the local high school. And probably they showcased a number of programs that they have. Here is a list of programs that cross all our high schools. Not each high school has every single one, but there are some programs that they do share. So each high school, for example, has a specialist high skills major. Each high school has cooperative education, has an OYAP program. And it also has pathways to employability program. So what does that mean? We have students that their pathway is to enter the world of work, but they just need that extra little bit of support through special education. So the PEP program is the ideal program for them. So who's the ideal candidate here? Student who's 16 years of age, possibly working on a non-credit program, identified with a mild intellectual disability or developmental disability or autism spectrum disorder, who is gung-ho, motivated to eventually have part-time work or a volunteer opportunity that's documented in the IEP, and is willing to learn the job readiness skills that is required to be successful, and also is willing to participate in a transition or a transit training program. And we have a wonderful partnership with the YRT that helps us with that. In secondary, we have special education programs that mirror the elementary programs that maybe your son or daughter are participating in. If your son or daughter has been formally identified with our board, they're in a special education program. That program will continue in secondary. So the ones that you see on the screen, I'll be discussing. So if I just want to share in the top corners, access to flyers. Those flyers are really helpful because those flyers will describe the programs that your son or daughter may be participating in. So take advantage of taking a look at those and learning as much as possible about the programs. So the first program is the Functional Life Skills Program. That's for students with a developmental disability. and they're on alternative expectations, working towards a certificate of accomplishment. The pathway could be a community-based program. What do I mean by that? It could be a day program. It could be a recreational program. It could be a volunteer program. It could be all three. Or they may decide to say, you know what, I want to try college. I want to go to a specialized college program. And the one that's very popular for our students at York Catholic is the Community Integration Through Cooperative Education, the CICE program that's run at Humber College. It's a 2-year program. So we know that students on alternative expectations is a very small percentage of our population. And we know that it's not derived from provincial curriculum. But what we try to do is we try to cluster the expectations so that they parallel the themes of that particular course. And the reason why we do that is so that we try to maximize not only integration, but also participation. So it's obviously an individualized program, and I'm going to be describing some of the areas later on. And again, we talked about the K courses. So the Functional Life Skills program is, again, a partnership. It's a collaboration between the classroom teacher, who is the expert of the content of the course, and the special education teacher who has the insights on your son or daughter. At York Catholic, we follow a mainstreaming philosophy. We believe the regular classroom is the most enabling learning environment, which is in line with the Ministry of Education, by the way. So all of our students are integrated in regular classes for at least 2 of the 4 periods, supported by an educational worker. But we also know and recognize that some expectations will be difficult to deliver in a regular class. So we do have life skills classes where students can be congregated to work on those life skills for up to 2 periods of day. So what are some of the themes in a functional life skills program? Well, it could be literacy, numeracy, self-care skills, household chores, pre-vocational, vocational skills, community safety skills, health hygiene skills, social skills. Every child is different, and your child has strengths. So it's all about focusing on the areas of need, and we'll emphasize those, and maybe de-emphasize areas that they don't need that extra support. So again, it's also individualized even within a life skills class. Educational support program is a program for students with a mild intellectual disability that have low adaptive skills. Low adaptive skills means the day-to-day functioning, okay? For this population, they're either on alternative expectations, modified expectations, or accommodated only, and they're working towards a Ontario Secondary School certificate. The pathway could be workplace or college vocational. Let's talk about workplace. We have a wonderful partnership with an employment agency called March of Dimes, and they work closely with us when students are close to graduating and want to enter the workforce. So for many of our students, that's what we do. We engage them with that particular employment agency. College vocational. Many of our students do apply to a college vocational program. The one that's very popular is the George Brown program. That's a 1-year program which prepares students for the world of work. We also recognize for students in the educational support program, they may need support in the daily living, the adaptive skills. So they can also enroll in a life skills class with the focus on self-care, health and safety, social skills, community use, etc. We talked about PEP, which is a very popular program. We talked about transit training, our partnership with the YRT. And we also recognize that this population here is going to need that extra layer of support to provide them the guidance that they need to move on to whatever post-secondary program they wish to follow. Core Resource Program is by far our largest program in high school. We do have some students with a mild intellectual disability in the Core Resource Program. This is a group that has low average to average adaptive skills. They could either be working on modified or accommodations, working towards a high school diploma, and their pathways either workplace, college vocational, or college. Again, Core Resource Program also includes students with a learning disability. They are accommodated or on modified expectations. They're working towards a high school diploma. Their pathway, either workplace, college, or university. So let's talk a little bit about the Core Resource Program. So students in the Core Resource Program, I mentioned two groups, students with a mild intellectual disability and students with a learning disability are working towards a diploma. They're fully integrated. We talked about accommodations and or modifications. And it really is a partnership. That student is working closely with the core resource teacher, working with that subject teacher, working on those educational goals that are highlighted within the IEP. The core resource teacher. What is the role of the core resource teacher in high school? Well, they work collaboratively with you, the parent, the student, the classroom teachers, to create that individual education plan. Okay, and that plan is geared to make that child as successful as they can be. They're providing accommodations, make sure those accommodations are in place within the IEP for the math EQAO in grade 9 and the literacy test in grade 10. We work with students in grade 9 on self-advocacy. We want our students to be equipped to be able to understand their IEP and to be able to articulate that to others, what they need. But that takes time. That self-advocacy piece takes time. So while they're learning how to advocate on behalf of themselves, the teachers are there on their behalf if need be. They monitor their progress. It's not just about waiting till midterm to see whether or not your child is doing well or not doing well. They monitor their progress closely. They assist with pathway planning. That last page of that IEP is absolutely critical. That's the transition page. What's the end in mind? What's the goal? What are we doing? What are the action plans and so forth? And there's also some direct teaching involved. Direct teaching of what? Whatever those goals and expectations within that IEP, there's direct teaching. There may be time for assessments as well. Every year we do an annual assessment, whether it's a formal diagnostic testing or if it's a review. We do that annual piece year after year. And they also support the resource room and support the student, whether that student is within the resource room, and there might be opportunities to support that child within the classroom. So what happens in the core resource room? The core resource room is really the hub for special education, delivering special education. That's where the direct teaching is taking place. Working on what? Working on whatever is dictated within the IEP, whether that's self-advocacy or learning skills. Some students need some training on assistive technology, and that takes place in the core resource room. Many students prefer to write their test or quiz down in the core resource room. They like the quiet setting. They like the support that they receive. But we also have to be mindful of the fact that even though we love to have the students down in the core resource room, and it is a magnet for many students, we always have to be careful that they don't miss any instructional time within the class. As I said, the class is the most enabling learning environment. We always want to maximize that time within that classroom. But if need be, we definitely encourage them to come down to the core resource room. Moving on to the social communication program. That program is for students that have autism spectrum disorder, ASD. Their pathway is different for each individual based on their cognitive ability. So based on their ability, it may resemble a student that has a developmental disability or a mild intellectual disability or LD or gifted, okay? But regardless of what the pathway may resemble, we are mandated to address the hidden curriculum. And what do I mean by the hidden curriculum? I mean that we focus on their social skills, self-regulation, and communication. Now, the way that we do that may vary from student to student. It could be right in the regular classroom. It could be in a resource withdrawal. They can come down to the resource room and we can do some direct teaching of those areas. Or it could even be in a congregated class, such as a life skills class or a social communication class. Okay. Students earning credits will have those expectations embedded within their IEP, those hidden curriculum expectations. Hearing or vision program. The hearing or vision program for students that have a hearing impaired or blind or low vision. They're working on accommodations or modified expectations. The level of service that they will be receiving will be determined by the hearing or vision teacher in consultation with the school team. So rest assured, there's going to be dialogue between hearing and vision with the team at the local school. They're working towards a high school diploma. The pathway is workplace, college, or university. Giftedness, a program for academic and creative extension, PACE. They're accommodated or modified. They're working towards a high school diploma. Very similar to elementary. Elementary has 4 PACE elementary schools. Secondary has 4 PACE schools as well. They're located, so in the east, we have St. Brother Andre. In the north, we have Sacred Heart. In the central, we have St. Teresa Lisieux. And in the west, we have Father Bersani. Okay. Again, the pathway is workplace, college, and university. About 20 years ago, we introduced to the PACE program the advanced placement. Advanced placement is a very, very popular program. It's offered in 75 countries and over 500 universities recognized advanced placement. So essentially in our PACE schools, this is how it works. Students taking in the PACE program will be taking AP courses, grade 9, grade 10, grade 11. There's extensions in those particular courses. They take an AP course of their choosing in grade 12, They do an exam, and if they're successful with that exam, they get advanced placement, which is huge. So if they're successful in doing the exam in AP English, instead of going into first year English, they're going into second year English, which is massive, even from a financial standpoint. So not only are they getting that, but they're also earning that grade 12 university level credit.
Okay, so it's my turn now. Lots of really great questions online. So I've been going through the Google form. So there are about 21 questions. We've answered many of them, good news, but there are lots that are actually phenomenal questions that I do want to take a little bit of time to address. So we'll do that in a minute. But before we do that, I do want to address the support that educational assistants can provide in high schools. We are very fortunate to have educational assistants working in our high schools just like they are in elementary. And they are a blessing to so many of us and so many of our schools because they're such a wonderful support to the system and to our students. But times have changed, and 25 years ago, the EAs that worked with students really provided all types of support, including, in some cases, academic support for students who in high school were earning credits. Those days are far gone, and the reason for that is that, we recognize that that's neither what they're trained or qualified to do. It's the job of a teacher, both special education teacher and subject teacher, to provide academic support. That's not the job of an EA. So if you have some time to take a look at our policy 229, it's recently been updated. We made sure that we clarified what exactly the role of our wonderful educational assistants is. And really, it's to support skills of daily living and alternative learning activities, not to support credit acquisition. And that's something that we have to continue to make very, very clear. And I'll be honest with you, that's a union discussion as well. Teachers are hired to provide academic support. That's their job description. EAs are hired to provide support with skills of daily living and alternative activities. It's very clearly outlined. So what are skills of daily living that EAs can support with? So they are listed there. So skills to support personal care like hygiene, dressing, toileting, feeding, mobility, functional communication, community participation, basic and functional skills. If students are endeavoring to earn credits, they need to do that independently, not with an EA sitting right beside them. Okay. And if they require special education, additional support, they can absolutely access that from a special education teacher. And really, first and foremost, from the subject teacher. In high school, most teachers, let's say a math teacher will teach in a 75-minute block, because our periods are 75 minutes, they'll teach about 40 minutes. And after that 40 minutes, the rest of the period is dedicated to one-on-one work with students as required. They don't have to have IEPs to receive that extra support. Students who have IEPs in the regular math class can then join the math teacher in one side of the classroom who's going over some of the concepts to reinforce some of the concepts that may have been a little bit confusing. And if the student still requires some additional support, then they absolutely can access that support from a special education teacher. And that's really the model of support in high school. Nothing replaces the regular class. The core resource teacher, the special education teacher in the core room is not expected to teach the math lesson that the math teacher taught in the math classroom upstairs. That's not the job of the special education teacher. Okay, that's the job of the math teacher, the subject matter expert in math. So that's a really critical piece to understand. We have our experts in different subjects and different disciplines, and the special education teacher is meant to then provide a little bit of that extra support, but they are not tutors, nor are EAs tutors. Okay, so that's really, really important. And so what I say to parents, and I've said it to students as well, I've said to parents often, if your child leaves us, whether it be within 4, 5, 6, or 7 years, with the exact same level of EA support that they had when they entered, we will have failed you. Because even those kiddos that will always, for the rest of their lives, require additional support, maybe down the road when they graduate and leave us, maybe it's from a PSW, maybe it's from a different type of support worker, even those kids who will always have to have that additional assistance, we hope we see them make some progress towards some higher level of independence. So I always stress that although we're grateful for the wonderful support that our EAs provide to our students, our job is to try to move them away from accessing any of that support because we want them to leave us as independent as they possibly can be. So I remember working with a parent, Lloyd and I worked with a parent for many years who was a wonderful advocate for her son. And she insisted, even though we really felt like he was far more independent than she was willing to admit because she was advocating for her son to have as much EA support as he could in high school. And he was staying with us for 7 years. And as he was approaching the end of those 7 years, we started to visit some day programs, which is where his destination was. He was going to spend most of his days after graduation in day programs. And when she realized that one-to-one support, which is what she was really insisting that he continue to have until the very last day that he was with us in YCDSB, when she realized it was $275 a day to give him that support, that it was going to come out of her pocket, she said, okay, I get it now. You're trying to help me, aren't you? We absolutely are. So we know that it's a tough discussion when we say we think your child is ready to start to, gradually move away from that intense level of support. It's a success. I know it's scary, but I often say to parents, we should be celebrating. Your child is gaining more independence. And so I hope that we can frame it as a positive, as opposed to, oh my gosh, stop, what are you doing to my child? We're actually doing whatever we can to give your child the highest level of independence they can possibly meet. And that really is our fundamental goal. So while we value the tremendous work of our EAs in our high schools like we do in elementary, we want to work away that EA from your child as soon as we possibly can. We don't do it before they're ready. We don't. We assess, we observe, we make sure they're ready to go. But when they're ready to move away from that extra EA support, that's a celebration. And I hope that everybody really starts to see the positive in that. So that last point is really important. Where possible, every effort will be made to provide incremental steps toward independence through a gradual release of responsibility from the adult to the student. So instead of walking side by side down the hallway in a high school, and that's how we start often when a student comes to a high school with EA support, a student with special needs. It's scary to walk through the crazy busyness of a high school from class to class, and the EA will often walk beside the student. Sometimes they hold hands, sometimes they're really side by side to offer that comfort. And let's hope that within a short amount of time, the EA is walking a few steps away from the student. Then eventually we want to see the EA walking behind the student. Then we want to see the EA walking way behind around the corner where he can see the student in the distance, but he's looking pretty good on his own until the point where that EA does not need to be there anymore. And that's when we celebrate. But it's not like we're going to rip them away so quickly and you're going to be so terrified. Oh my gosh, he's not ready. If your child has an EA right now in high school, they will most likely be transitioning with that shared model of support in elementary, I should say. They will most likely be transitioning with some of that support to high school as well. Not a problem at all. But from the day they walk in our doors, we start to develop a pathway to independence plan, and they have it in their IEPs now. So if your child has an EA right now, in their IEP, you will see a pathway to independence plan. It's mandatory if a child has an EA. But we look at that plan. And oftentimes we look at the plan and we say, wait a minute, it says in the PIP that the EA is supporting the student to ask questions appropriately when they're confused in math class. That's not the job of an EA. The job of an EA is to toilet and to feed and to ensure that, safety with some of our kiddos who can't manage and self-regulate their behaviors and could potentially pose a risk to themselves or others. That's safety. But it's not the EA's job to tap the student and say, oh, I see you didn't get that question. It's a good time to put your hand up and ask the question in the class where you're earning a credit. It's not what the EA is meant to do. Okay, so this is reshaping how we understand the role of the EA should look in a high school, but we're not ripping off the Band-Aid overnight. We're going to help you get to the point, and your child get to the point where they're ready to work independently as possible. So before I start to address the questions very quickly, the transportation policy, you can take some time to take a look at it. If your child lives within the boundary of that school, they have the ability to access either the regular big yellow school bus if that area is busing students, depending on how far away from the school they live, or in some cases, and this is not many students in our board receive special busing, and that's door-to-door busing. And again, door-to-door busing is for students who can't possibly navigate on their own on the yellow school bus with the neurotypical kiddos. Many of our kids can. We've often had parents say, "My child has autism. He needs to have the minibus pick him up door to door." And I said, "But your child is one smart young man, and he's probably going to actually end up going to university down the road. Why are we giving him door-to-door busing? We're not doing him any favors. You don't get busing because you have ASD. Remember, you can have ASD and go to university down the road. It is a spectrum, so there are various ranges. Some of the kids will always require busing. If a student is in a wheelchair, 100% busing will always be guaranteed door-to-door, not a problem. But where there is a possibility of independence, busing is a big place to see that independence happen. Studies show that students who are able to ride YRT, public transit, those are students who down the road will be far more engaged in their community, and they will be far more successful in holding down a job and navigating the community, going to college or university or a vocational program. So Lloyd mentioned, we actually provide transit training as part of our role in secondary as well. So we really do believe in the power of independence around transportation as well. So we'll guide you through that piece. Again, we're not going to rip off the Band-Aid. If your child has busing door to door right now, we don't expect that in first day of high school they're ready to go. They won't be. We'll help them get there. Okay, and that's a discussion with your elementary school, because they have to put in and submit the paperwork for special busing to be considered for September. So that's something you're going to want to remind the elementary school about. So what does September look like? Okay, I promise you will all be nervous. If you try to think far back and remember what you felt like going into grade 9, it was a scary time. No one is going to deny that. And then on top of that, when our kiddos have some needs, whether they be learning needs, social needs, emotional needs, we're that much more scared for our kids. We're all parents here. I have 2 girls who went to high school now, then university and so on. One of them found it super easy to engage, and the other one struggled. And grade 9 was a rough ride, but we got through it. And there were wonderful people at her school to support her with that. And you really need to know that there will be a wonderful team of educators that will be working together to support your kids when they get there. And it's really exciting that you won't just be, a number. And people always say that, we say it often in high school. When you get to university, you're only going to be a number. Even that's changed, but you're definitely not just a number. Your child is not just a number in high school. They will have a team behind them. And that team will support them in all ways. So grade 9 orientation is going to be critical. Try not to be away on that first day of school. We don't let anybody show up to school except for the grade 9s. And let me tell you, it's a good thing, because that first day is scary, but it's far more, relaxing and easier to navigate when the big kids aren't around. I always say, I looked at my nephew this weekend. He's in grade 8. He's doing his applications for high school now. I swear to you, he's this big. And I said to my little sister, when I taught high school, I always said they start as little boys when they come in, especially the boys. Girls tend to mature faster, and they leave as men, right? You walk around in grade 12, the grade 12s have beards, right? And they've got these little boys kicking around, looking at these men that are running. It's such a shift in what happens in those 4 years. But when they start in grade 9, often they're tiny, they're immature, they're nervous, and you've got these adults. You don't know if it's a teacher or if it's a student, right? And it's scary. So nobody is there on the first day of school except for the grade 9s. And that's a really great opportunity for them to navigate around the school. They figure out how to open their locker. Locks aren't easy. Try to have your child bring that lock home and practice it before they get to school on the first day. They're going to take them to look at the different classrooms. Where's your math class? Where's your science class? And so on. Really important to have your child participate in the grade 9 orientation. So making connections is important. To this day, after I've been, I taught for many years. I've been an educator for 28 years, but I taught in schools for many, many years. I consider many of the parents that I had the privilege of working with friends today, because truly, we supported their children together. We were a team, and we built relationships because of it. So, I felt blessed to be part of their lives and their children's lives. And I know that most of our educators will say the same thing. We've got 17 high schools. They all offer the same programs. And so people often say, okay, these are the 3 high schools I'm choosing from, especially if you're in a tri-feeder area. They all offer the same program. We manage and run and write the programs and policies and procedures for them. So it's the same in every building. However, staff are different, like any service, like any, whether you're working in a shop, a restaurant, a hospital, you're a doctor, you're a teacher, you're going to like some teachers more than others. You're going to like some principals more than others. You've got to get a feel for those people, right? But the programs are all the same, and that's really important for you to know. I always think it's great to take your child to the school that's in the catchment area. So the closest school to where you live, because that's where they forge their connections, their friends. You don't have to drive them across York Region to get them to where the friends are. It makes things a little bit more difficult. But again, you have the ability to register your child at any high school at York Catholic. Anyone will accept you. Although your child will not get special busing or busing at all if they're registering in a school that's out of area. So that's something that you need to remember. So routine is established in practice. So really, like I was saying, the locker, the lunch, those pieces, often it's the special education teacher that helps students through those kind of, bumpy first few days, right? I know when I was in the core room, I would be on standby, because the first few days, kids would be running to the room. Miss, I can't open my locker. I can't remember where my math class is, almost in tears. And that's where I would jump in and say, okay, let's go. We've got this. Let's go together to class. I'm going to help you open your locker. Let me show you some tricks. That's what the special education teacher can do for your student as well. And so the invitation to collaborate on the IEP is really critical. When the children get to high school, we really want them to be part of the development of their IEP. Tell me how you learn best, right? Sometimes it's hard for them to articulate what their strengths and needs are. But in learning strategies, like Michelle said, which is one of my favorite classes, 2 of my favorite classes to teach, by the way, were the locally developed classes and the GLE classes. The kids were the greatest in those classes, and most of us teachers agree with that. But we need students to understand their strengths and needs. And I tell students all the time, the IEP is not an excuse telling us that you can't learn. The IEP, in fact, is just an instruction manual for how you learn best. I wish I had one for myself, because we all learn in different ways. And so that's an important piece for kiddos to understand what it is that allows them to learn best. Ongoing check-ins are important. So yeah, I would be the one that called the parent and said, don't tell him I called, FYI, he skipped. Right? So that's the kind of relationship that many of the core teachers will have, the special education teachers will have with you, and make an effort to reach out and to introduce yourself and to understand that we want the best for your child. We won't always see eye to eye. We're going to disagree. We might have some instances where I think that this type of approach is best, when it comes to the academic pieces, and you know your child best. And so you want to put your 2 cents in, and absolutely. But as partners, we will always come to a solution. So always try to maintain that open level of communication, not just with the special education teacher, but with the subject teachers. Calling those teachers in the first week, the math, the science, the history teacher, just introducing yourself and saying, my child has an IEP. happy to discuss as you start to build the semester 1 IEP. I'm here. Let's review it together. Teachers appreciate that type of openness. So I do encourage that relationship, start very, very early on. Extracurricular activities are huge. Studies show that when students in high school engage in extracurriculars, they feel far more connected, like they belong, like they have a purpose. It's not just about the academics, especially with our gifted kiddos who think they have it all together because they're super smart, but that social piece often is lacking. And so I always encourage them, go join a club, go join a team. I have 2 girls. Neither one was athletic in any way. And so I said to them, it doesn't have to be sports, but in grade 9, you pick one activity to join. And if you don't pick one, I will be signing you up for wrestling. And so very quickly they picked something. So I'm going to give you a tip if you don't have athletic kids like I didn't. The youth group is beautiful. Those are the kids in the school who are the cream of the crop. They're the lovely kids. They go to soup kitchens. They, are responsible for doing the food drive. They go apple picking and, they do prayer groups. And it's just beautiful kids that sometimes don't find a place to belong anywhere else, but that's the place that they'll belong. So if you don't know where to encourage your child to join a club or to consider youth group, it's a beautiful thing to join. But there's a huge team for you and for your children in the high school, okay? We don't just have the special education teacher. You're blessed because your children will also be assigned a guidance counselor and a VP. That's their team, right? And I would always say to the student, we're your people. We're who you come to when you need something. Right? And especially that special education teacher, that teacher will get to know that student more than anybody. Often that teacher will stay with the student, assigned to the student to support them for the entire time that they're in high school. It depends on the model in each school, but often we don't switch up rosters. That one teacher may support that student for 4 years or more. And boy, do you get to know that student. And it really is such a blessing. I remember a parent who had a young lady, a daughter who had a learning disability, and she absolutely refused to peek into the special education room. She would not enter the hallway where the core resource room was located. And so her mother brought her in one day to see me, and she said, "Can you please speak to her? She needs help. She needs you. She needs assistance, and she's too embarrassed to come into this room." And when she came into the room at that particular time, some of the coolest kids in the school were in the core room at the time, because some of the coolest kids in the school have a learning disability. At that time, the student president had a learning disability. And she also went off to Schulich and did great things, right? So, she looked around and she thought, oh, this is interesting. And by the end of her 4 years, we couldn't get her out of the core room. She had, go to class. No, but I just want to finish my work here. So they will start to realize that the support, the free support, is actually very beneficial. And especially when they're en route to college and university, when they're fighting for every percentage point to get into those highly coveted seats in post-secondary, they want all the help that they can get, right? So we definitely convince the kiddos that we're a good place to be. And when they feel supported and realize that they do better when they have that space to be themselves and to ask those questions that they might be embarrassed to ask in class, it's a good thing for them at the end of the day. Apart from those people, we have the different types of courses and things that they can participate in. Other than guidance and special education and all of your subject teachers, we've got chaplaincy, we've got the student success team, we've got BRS, multidisciplinary attendance counselors, mental health workers. We've got lots and lots of supports in secondary, and we can help. We can help. And some of our kids need that extra support in some way. Sometimes it's a mental health piece. Sometimes there's some anxiety on top of a learning disability, on top of ASD, and we can certainly support with that as well. So what should you come away with? Key takeaways. Your child will be supported by a robust team of educators. That's a must, and I can guarantee you, for sure, you will be seeing that as your child is in high school. High school is about so much more than just academics. And this is what we need to teach our kiddos, right? It's not just about keep your head down, go to class, get your marks, and go home. We want them to have friends. We want them to have extracurricular opportunities and experiences. And if they're not engaging, you pick up that phone and you call the guidance counselor and or the special education teacher, and you say, I think she's eating lunch alone. Can you help? Right? And we do. So those are the things that you need to know. There's always someone in the building who's really, they're your team. And I think that that's critical. So pathways can be adjusted along the way. There are lots of questions that have come up online in the Google Doc, and I'll share some of them. But a lot of them talk about adjusting courses, adjusting pathways. So one parent said, well, if my child starts in D-streamed courses and let's say fails one of those D-streamed courses, is that it? Are the doors closed for college and university because they can't get through that course? Absolutely not. Doors sometimes close, but we can always find a way to reopen them. Even with locally developed courses, please remember, locally developed courses are courses, they're credits. They count towards the 30 credits that you need to graduate. So students with locally developed credits can graduate with an Ontario Secondary School Diploma. That's really critical to understand, okay? But if a student starts in a locally developed program, and I have to tell you, often within the first 2 weeks, it doesn't take long to figure out that, maybe the student isn't in the right place. And by that, I mean, the student is taking locally developed, but they should have tried de-streamed. There's some potential there that seems to be, kind of below the surface, and we can pull out of that student. So we can readjust. Typically within the first 2 weeks, we do it all the time. I remember frantically running into the guidance office and saying to the guidance counselor, I need you to move Joey. He's in locally developed math, and he's doing so well, I think you need to move him out of there. And let's put him in a deal. D-stream just happened 2 years ago. When I was back in the schools, there was no D-stream. It was a different course at the time. But there was still a locally developed course. And for whatever reason, he ended up in the wrong place. And it was very quick that we were able to spot it. But I have to tell you, just like that, we also see very quickly that a student in another course, whether it be locally developed or de-streamed, is really struggling. And we get worried. We pour on the accommodations and we do whatever we can to support that student. I always say accommodate, accommodate, accommodate to the nth degree. When you've done everything that you can pull out of your hat and they still can't pass the course, then we have to have a discussion. Okay? So doors sometimes are closed, but they can be reopened. So if your child takes the D-stream courses, and let's say your child fails the math, D-streamed, and now we know there's no choice but to take the locally developed D-stream, so the locally developed math course in grade 9 in order to get the credit. That doesn't mean your child is not going to go to college or university. I'll tell you a little secret. As long as they stay in an English course, at the very least at the college level, they can go to college. They do have to be in a university level English course in grade 12 to go to university. But locally developed English is not going to get them into college and university, at least not right away. Because they can still apply to college and university with locally developed courses in a different type of approach where it's a transfer program in a college. They do some upgrading and then they move in to a college, typical college program. So that's why I always say, it seems like we close doors, but we're always moving and shaking in the high school. We're always negotiating with the guidance counselor, with parents. Let's try this, let's try that. He did the locally developed math in grade 9, but he got a 97. He shouldn't have been there. And we didn't move him for whatever reason. Maybe sometimes parents feel like, let's try in a way where the student won't be overwhelmed. So it's not too late. Someone online said, well, does that mean my child has to stay for 5, 6, 7 years if they started in locally developed and they decided to shift their pathway? Not necessarily. You can take night school and summer school to upgrade your course. And then the following semester, you end up back in the class where your peers are. So lots of ways to figure out where your child is best suited to learn to their fullest potential. And, you know, we always talk about aptitude, right? The ability that a child has, that natural ability that they have, the intelligence that they're born with versus effort. And I'm going to be honest with you. We see a lot of our boys, this is, you know, studies show this, who may not start to really show their ability until a little bit later on. Sometimes it's because of attentional issues. Sometimes it's because they're fooling around in class with their boys. We are not going to limit their potential to enter college and university because they goofed around in grade 8. That's not what you do. If we know that the student has potential, then he's going to go to that D-stream class and we're going to see that potential unleashed. And he's going to go to college and university down the road, right? So do we need to see a child have a 96% in grade 8 math in order to go to D-streamed? Absolutely not. But I will tell you, when we are modifying grade 8 curriculum, we start to get a little bit nervous. Okay, so that's where you do have to have a discussion with the school around what those modifications look like and the impact that they're going to be having on your child. Sometimes modifications are 100% absolutely necessary. Your child is assessed in grade 6, 7, 8, and you very quickly recognize that they're not at the level that they need to be for that particular grade. We got to take a step back and do some work and do some gap closing. And let's try to get them there, right? Modifications are needed in so many cases, but they are going to cause the student to struggle when they get to grade 8 if they are very excessive. Sorry, when they get to grade 9, if they're very excessive in grade 8, and that's the reality, okay? So one of my favorite questions is, how do I get my kid out of French? So that was one of the first questions that popped up. So I'm the wrong person to ask because I'm a language person. I speak 4 languages and I'm passionate about languages, and French is one of them. There are many studies that show the power of learning a second language, whether the student has a learning disability, developmental disability. I grew up with my cousin Eddie, who had a developmental disability. He's a year older than me. And I'm of Croatian background. I was born into a Croatian family. It was my first language. Eddie was fluent in Croatian, still is to this day, has a severe learning developmental disability. He speaks English and Croatian fluently. Anybody can learn a second language. It is so powerful. Studies show that it does wonders for the human brain to learn a second language. Don't pull your child out of French unless it is absolutely necessary. We're a bilingual country. We should be allowing our children the opportunity to learn French. Now, let's be honest. All they need to do is grade 9 French and they're done. They never have to take it again. But don't pull them out of French. I believe that it is actually something, especially they say for kids with learning disabilities, it actually helps to do a little bit of rewiring of the brain. So do a little bit of research on that. We've provided a link in the slide deck, actually, that talks about the power of second language learning for students with learning disabilities. It's really, really amazing. Do GLE courses limit students' ability to attend university? So that's another question that was asked. Absolutely not. GLE is a credit course. Students can earn 4 of them, grade 9, grade 10, grade 11, grade 12. You can get credits, and those credits can be accepted towards the OSSD, and you can enter university with those credits, okay? And one of the things, many questions were about whether or not my child's learning disability will prevent them from going to college or university. Absolutely not. So, one of my, and I know I shouldn't have favorites, but one of my favorite students of all time had autism, still in touch. He ended up in the computer science program at Waterloo. If you know anything about that program, when he entered about 5 or 6 years ago, the average to get in was 98%. He got in and he knocked it out of the park. But you know what? He had meltdowns where they had to clear out lecture halls. But he went to university and he is working in the field now, and he is amazing. Okay? Now, learning disabilities, To me, that just, like I said, it just tells us that you learn a little differently, not that you can't learn. We know that automatically tells us you have average to above average level of intelligence. No college or university will know that you have a disability when you are applying. Nobody's allowed to tell that to the college or university. The only person that can tell them that is you. Once you have been admitted, you will continue to get an IEP in college and university. A lot of parents don't realize that. You can still get accommodations in college and university, right? You can still become a doctor. You can still become a lawyer and do all of those wonderful things with a learning disability and still receive accommodations when you get to college and university. And nobody discloses or shares the fact that you have a learning disability or any other type of disability with the college or university. That's illegal. We cannot do that. You have to self-disclose that. Your child will have to self-disclose that. And they won't have an IEP. They'll have an accommodation plan. Same thing, different name, but they will still get that extra help. Right. So I think that's exciting for parents to realize. And so many of our kids have been so successful. A parent asked, Michelle referred to strands, and he said, what is a strand? So Michelle said, we cannot, when we are modifying in high school, fully eliminate a strand. So for example, I wrote it down. So for example, in grade 9 D stream math, the strands are social emotional learning, financial literacy, numbers, algebra, data, geometry, and that's it, okay? You can't just get rid of financial literacy altogether. Let's cut that strand out. Let's just focus on the others. You can't do that in high school. You have to learn every single one of the strands or you will not be granted the credit, okay? So that was a great question. So strands, I wanted to make sure I shared that with you. Equipment for students. So if students have equipment in grade 8, it could be a special desk. Maybe they have a physical disability, so it could be a special desk. It could be a special type of chair, maybe a walker, a stander, or for students with learning disabilities, often it's a Chromebook or a laptop. We've got kids with developmental disabilities. Many of them have iPads. That equipment will all be moved over to the high school. We will receive it typically at the end of June. Actually, Anthony, our tech guy, and thanks, Anthony, before I forget, thanks for all of your help tonight and for figuring out the tech glitches. Anthony is part of a team that helps those transfers happen. So we pack up the equipment, the grade 8 schools with the support of the SEA trainers, pack up that equipment and ship it off to the high school. We receive it in the high school and we set it up and we're good to go. So parents said, well, what if the student has a special desk or special type of chair that they need to have in each of their classes? Not a problem. We order a special type of chair and a special type of desk to be in each of the classes that the student is integrated in. So we have a solution for the accommodations that students need in every way, so you don't have to worry. Plus, we have the support of occupational therapists. When a student comes in with a physical disability, the occupational therapist will always come to the high school, do an assessment to make sure that everything is accessible and that we are properly ready to receive the student. So that's a very important message that I hope everybody understands as well. Few questions about how long can a student stay in high school. So not students with a developmental disability, but a typical student, let's say, who has a learning disability. Maybe it's going to take them 5 or 6 years to get that OSSD. The Ministry of Education has made it such that any student with an IEP can stay until they're 21. Any student. So if your child needs a few extra years to get the courses they need to do, to get that Ontario Secondary School Diploma, no problem. They can stay as long as they need to stay. So if it takes them 7 years to get the OSSD, cool, not a problem. Is it recommended that they stay for 7 years? Typically not. Kids with developmental disabilities absolutely benefit from staying that extra time. We need more time to work on things like transit training and those functional life skills. We want to get them ready to go out, let's say, to the world of work as soon as we can. But kiddos typically that are going off to college and university, absolutely, take an extra year, take an extra second year, right? We used to call it the victory lap, right? A couple of extra years, not a problem. More than that, it gets to be a bit too much because you've got to think, you're pushing 20 now, and there are 14-year-olds in the school. You just don't feel okay anymore. And that's what we've seen in our experience. So we sooner recommend that they consider taking some night school courses or summer school courses so they don't have to be back in the halls with the little kids, right? So that's what we do. But we guide them through all of that. But even students with ADHD, as long as a student has an IEP, they're welcome to stay until 21. I'm just trying to think if there are any other questions. There were a few other questions. Making notes as I was going through. I think I got them all. Adjusting course types, I think we talked about all that already. I think we're good. I think I answered the bulk of the questions, and many of them were answered throughout. So the last message, I want to reiterate what I started with, okay? And this is for you. Stay calm and breathe, because I'm telling you that your stress and I see some faces, you're nervous. I know it and I get it. And that's normal. I was nervous too when my kids started this journey, but they're going to be okay. And even if you don't feel it, fake it around them, right? You're going to be okay. It's all good. We're going to do this together. You're going to have a team to support you. I promise you that within the month of September, you are going to start to relax and you're going to realize it's far less scary than I thought it was going to be. I promise. And I hope if I see you somewhere down the line that you say, you were right. And parents often do say that to me. There will be challenges. We know it's not easy to be a teenager these days. Oh boy, it is not easy. Academics are the least of our worries. Let's be honest, right? So we're there to support them with all things that are problematic, including the mental health piece, because we know since COVID, a lot of our kiddos are struggling. We're struggling, right? And look at the pace of life these days. We had almost, I think, 400 people register to be here this evening. Look around, right? Life is busy. Life is crazy. Things get in the way. But we really do have a support system in our schools that I am confident in saying, YCDSB will support your kiddo as much as we possibly can. And I always say, I will treat your child like they were my own, because that's what I would expect you to do if I sent my child to you. And that's all of our philosophies, really. So I would like to just put a pitch in. We are planning a really neat event on May 8th, and I know it's way ahead of time, but we've had to really start to talk to our day programs. So this is really only for those parents who have students with more complex needs. If you know already, and many of us already know that, our kiddos aren't going to be going to college or university or the world of work, and most likely they're going to require some type of a day program on a daily basis while you continue to work, at your job. When they graduate at 21, many of our students go off to participate in a day program, some a couple days a week, some every day of the week. It depends on the arrangement. On May 8th, we have invited, 25 day programs in here. So we used to do this every year. We didn't do it since before COVID. And so we're so excited to be bringing this back. So even if this doesn't apply to you, because maybe you're here because your child is a gifted student, maybe you're here because a child is a hearing student, maybe you're here because a child has an LD. But if you do know of someone, or you yourself have a child with a developmental disability that might be joining a day program when they graduate, I would love for you to come out on this night, May 8th. We will all be here again, and there will be an entire lobby full of guests from different day programs they'll start to give you information about what that will look like for your child, if that's where their destination, where their pathway is. There are waiting lists that are years and years long for these types of places. So we say by 16, you should be putting your child's name on a list. So we'd love for you to come out and be with us that evening, and we'll have a keynote speaker that evening as well. Typically, it's Claire McDonald from YSSN. She talks about the fact that students who have disabilities almost always qualify for government funding. And that's a little secret that people don't always know about. Tax breaks and other things. Yeah, Lloyd says, yeah, because we often say it to parents, and they say, really? Nobody told me that. So lots of really neat information that will be shared with you that evening. So I think we went through most of the questions. I know you will have more. You have experts all around. You can certainly call any of us. But of course, your elementary school teams can answer a lot of these questions as well. And what Michelle said, I think you really have to keep in mind. Don't wait too long to make your decision. Register your child. More than ever, our classes are filling up and we have max class sizes. Once we fill up a class, we will not pierce that maximum class size. And so all of our courses get full. So even though the school is not full, if you try to register your child in June, a lot of high schools have turned parents away and said, we're sorry, our classes are all full. We have no classes to give your child. So try to make that decision sooner than later because it will limit your child's choices when they want to pick courses in high school. And we've got a lot of really cool courses to pick from, especially those elective courses. So you're going to want to give your child the opportunity to pick, from the long list as opposed to a limited list because you've registered your child really late. I think that's it. Now, do you have any questions? Our friends here this evening who braved the weather to be with us here. Again, we'll be here for a little while longer before we hit the road. So if you want to come up to any one of us and ask some questions, absolutely. But if anybody wants to put their hand up and ask a question, happy to field any questions here. Yes. So any day now, because I know here they've been very busy putting together all of the guidelines, the registration packages, the course calendars, and all of that at the schools. It's going to be happening very, very soon, right? But that information will come to you from your elementary schools for sure. But you can also go on the board website. The board website often offers a breakdown of timelines for registration. So I think there's more information there. But if you are currently in one of our YCDSB schools, you're going to find out all the information you need very shortly. And they're going to help you through the course selection and all of that you need to do. Yeah, great question. I think there was another, yeah, go ahead. Yep. So the Kickstart program has really taken off. I think last year we had something like 2,500 students across the board registered. So the Kickstart program is an elementary, grade 8 to grade 9 transition summer school course that students take in the month of July. It's not mandatory, but students will earn a grade 9 credit for that Kickstart course. Just a cautionary kind of note here. For the first time last year, that Kickstart course was coded as a GLS course, which is pretty much the identical course to GLE that we've been talking about, right? GLE is Learning Strategies for Kids with Learning Disabilities and ADHD. GLS is Learning Strategies for all students, okay? So last year they decided to code Kickstart as GLS, and we started to get lots and lots of phone calls from parents who had registered their children to take GLE in grade 9 because they were smart enough to know you can't earn 2 of the same credit, and they really are the same credit. So please don't let that prevent you from registering your child for Kickstart, because GLS will then be recoded for those students that are taking GLE in grade 9. So that means your child will absolutely be granted a different credit. They're just going to recode it. They have the ability to do that in the guidance office in high school. So your child will absolutely earn that credit as well as the GLE that they end up taking in grade 9 if they are registered. So the elementary schools will be providing promotional materials to give you information about when the program starts. Like I said, it's the month of July, and it's always in the high school where your child will be transitioning to. So it's kind of cool because they get to, be in the high school for a month. They get used to what the building is all about, and they start to meet new people that will be in their classes and become friends to them when they start in September. So it's a really great opportunity. I'm a little sad for all those kids who used to have a summer of no school, right? And I said, what are you guys doing? These kids need to have a break. But everybody seems to be, I'm going to be honest, everybody seems to be registering their child in that course. It's kind of neat because when you have an extra course like that, you get a head start. And in grade 12, you can take a spare, which is always nice. People always like that when they get to grade 12. So it's win-win, it certainly is. But let's find some time to give them a break too, at least in the month of August. Let them put their feet up and video game and, shop and do what they love to do, because they need a break too, right? Any other questions? Yes. Yep. Thanks for asking that. Like I was saying earlier on, I am going to tomorrow, as soon as I can, get in and get organized. I will send everybody the slide deck. So exactly what you're seeing here, sir, you're going to get that electronically. So as long as you're registered, if you're registered in that form, then everybody will be receiving it, whoever's registered. I'm also going to send you the video recording. Anthony is going to, set it up so that I'll also send you the video recording in case you want to have a look at that or share it with someone maybe that didn't have a chance to be here. But absolutely, I will be sharing that with you. And I'd love for you to take some time to use those QR codes that I spent so long trying to develop. So much fun. And you'll see some of the pamphlets that talk more about what the programs look like in high school. Lots of information there that, we didn't want to go through all the details, but there is lots of information there that you can refer to later. And I hope you take some time to do that. Any other questions? Yeah. You know what? We don't. So we did that one year and we literally got 1,000 questions over the next couple of months and it became a little bit unruly. You know what? You can certainly give me a call or email me and we can connect at a later time for sure. We already almost chatted the other day anyway, so you know how to get a hold of me. And I think that's it, unless there are more questions. I sincerely thank you for braving the weather and being here this evening. We would have done this to an empty room anyway because we wanted to make sure that we recorded it so we could share it and post it. But it was nice to have an audience. I apologize for the tech issues. Looks like the MacBook is what let us down. So Anthony figured it out, which is a good thing. Your kids are going to be okay. They will be in good hands. We promise you that. Okay. Have a great night and safe drive home, please.